Thank you very much, Mr Davies. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I also congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Rotherham, on securing this very important debate today. November will mark 1 year since the onset of violence in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, which started in retaliation to an attack on the northern command by the Tigray People's Liberation Front. This is a complex conflict with many different actors on the ground. But the reports of this conflict have consistently included evidence of mass executions, the targeting of Tigrayans by ethnicity, the destruction of crops, livestock and machinery, and the use of rape and sexual violence as a weapon of war. It is estimated that tens of thousands of Tigrayan women and girls have been raped since this conflict began. The conflict has led to a humanitarian disaster in Tigray, with NGOs continuing to report difficulties getting into the region. The latest reports indicate that Tigray is still facing siege-like conditions, and a recent UN aid convoy was held for 2 days at a checkpoint, after which only 9 of the trucks were allowed to proceed. 5.5 million people are facing crisis levels of food insecurity, and 350,000 are at catastrophic risk. There are sickening accounts of Tigrayans being held in prison camps near the Sudanese border, with reports from Sudan of corpses floating down the Setit River, clearly identifiable as Tigrayans and showing signs of torture. This conflict contains the hallmarks of ethnic cleansing and genocide. And there are reports of the use of white phosphorus, which, while not classified as a chemical weapon, delivers appalling injuries. In addition to the problems with humanitarian access, it has also been very difficult for journalists seeking to report on the situation in Tigray. There are some extremely brave journalists who have continued to do so, often placing themselves in grave danger and facing an aggressive smear campaign for their work. Among them, I would particularly pay tribute to Nima El-Bagir and Lucy Kassa, brave women who've done so much to bear witness to the atrocities in Tigray. Despite the horrors unfolding in Tigray, this conflict has remained underreported and under-prioritised by the international community. I secured an adjournment debate on Tigray in March, and at that time, 5 months into the conflict, with 10,000 women and girls at that point reported to have been raped, this was the only debate to have taken place in any Western parliament. I have constituents with loved ones in Tigray in fear for their lives, and constituents working with NGOs in Ethiopia seeking to deliver aid to Tigray. The response to the conflict from the UN so far has been insufficiently resourced, and there is an urgent need for additional capacity. In this context, it is also concerning that the government of Ethiopia appears to be withdrawing from the international community, with reports that as many as half, around 30 of its international embassies, are to close. I hope the Minister will set out today what the UK government is doing to secure a stronger response from the UN and ensure that the attention of the international community is focused on Tigray. What is the government doing to increase the mobilisation of UK-funded aid to support UK nationals delivering humanitarian assistance? What is the government doing to secure a peace process to prevent this conflict from escalating further across Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa? Will the UK government prioritise trauma support and healthcare services for women and girls who are survivors of rape and sexual violence as a first-order priority of its humanitarian response? And will the Minister finally recognise the catastrophic implications of cutting international aid at this time? The conflict in Ethiopia risks a humanitarian catastrophe potentially as serious as the famine of the 1980s. And there are other equally pressing priorities across the world, including the 18 million people in need of humanitarian aid in Afghanistan. In the current context of cuts, each time the Minister stands up and says that the government is committing additional resources to a humanitarian emergency, it begs the question, at the expense of which other humanitarian priority is this additional aid being delivered? And this simply cannot be justified in the face of such unfolding horror.
Thank you, Helen. Now over to Florence.